today I want to talk about something that we all have in common, and it's this, a calling. For whether each of you knows this or not, each one of you has a specific calling upon your life, a purpose that you were made to fulfill, and a difference that only you can make. Perhaps you've had this moment before. It could be a voice that you hear or a whisper telling you to do something. But more than that, maybe it's just a gut feeling that you have something that only you can accomplish. My story begins with that moment for myself. January of last year, I'm sitting in a hard-backed wooden church pew, kind of bored, flipping through the church bulletin through the service, when I come across an ad that's asking for tutors on Wednesday nights. Okay, I said to myself, I don't do half bad in school, I managed to get by, I might as well show up and see if I can be of any help. Little did I know the magnitude of the journey that was set before me. So I showed up that first Wednesday night, and this is what I found. Hundreds of kids. Let me tell you, that was chaos. They all run up to me with their wide eyes and their toothless grins and their dirty hands, and they all want to know exactly the same thing. What in the world was I doing there? And honestly, as I looked around and I realized that I was one of maybe 8 volunteers there that night, I kind of wondered what I was doing there too. But needless to say, this was my calling. This was my moment when I knew that I had something that only I could do, and I knew I had to stay. But there's something very unique about the kids in this room that I haven't told you yet. Each one of these kids was a refugee. Now, it's very important to understand exactly what a refugee is. A refugee is different from an immigrant. An immigrant is someone who chooses to leave his or her own country. A refugee doesn't have that choice. A refugee is forced out of their country due to persecution, war, violence, famine, or any other thing that makes their country no longer safe to be lived in. And that was the reality for each one of these kids in that room. They'd been forced to leave their own country, dropped into a new culture, and left here on their own. Since then, I've made it my mission to help develop this program from something of chaos into something of order. What's developed since then is something called STAR Kids. STAR stands for Serve, Teach, Advocate, and Reach. Here's how it works. S stands for Serve. Now, first off, I know that none of these kids will listen to anything I say unless I give them something in return. So the first thing we do is we feed them. We give them a big meal. We make sure that we can at least somewhat keep their attention, because we know that they're not going to listen on an empty stomach. Aside from that, we meet their most basic needs, such as clothing or shoes or school supplies or anything else that they might need throughout the week. Next comes teach. This is the actual tutoring part. Depending on the night, we split the kids up into groups from 5 to 15 kids, and we help them with their English, their writing, their math, their homework, or even just cultural skills that they don't yet have. A stands for advocate. Helping each one of these kids be successful reaches far beyond just meeting their physical needs and their educational needs. Each one of us needs an advocate in our life to help us in the places that we can't help ourselves. For many of us, this is our parents or our guardians. They take us to the doctor's office, or they help us go to school conferences, or they help us fill out job applications or tax forms, or things that we simply don't understand on our own. But the reality for many of the STAR kids is that their parents don't speak English, or they don't understand the culture nearly well enough to help them. So the goal of the advocate portion of this program is to match up a refugee family with a volunteer that will help them navigate through otherwise confusing systems. Next comes reach. I know, isn't he cute? This part is my favorite, because this is the point when volunteers no longer become necessary, and we know that we've done our job well. For you see, when you serve people's basic needs, teach them the skills they need to know, advocate for them in the places that they can't, then you create the potential for someone else to reach their dream, on their own, self-sufficient. But don't take my word for it, take the kids. This first girl, this is my girl Ferrani. Now, a year ago, she told me she did not want to be in school, she would not sit down in a chair, she would run around the room crazy on Wednesday nights, wouldn't listen to a word that I said. Today, she's at the top of her class, loves math, and someday is going to be an engineer. This is little Dahava. This girl's going to be a teacher, and she made me pinky promise that someday I would send my kids to her school. And this is Taxi. Now, a year ago, when Taxi came to the United States, He was scared out of his mind of policemen. He thought that they were evil. They wanted to hurt him. Today, Taxi wants to be a policeman when he grows up. And let me tell you, you do not want to be caught speeding when this kid is in the cop car. And yet there's still something that I haven't told you about Star Kids. And it's this. Who do you think the volunteers are? Who makes this happen? Adults? Parents? Teachers? Churchgoers? No, none of the above. The volunteers that come each week are students. High school students, middle school students, college students. Students just like you and me. Nothing extraordinary, nothing that makes us qualified to help these kids. The only difference is this. We heard a call and we answered it. For you see, each one of us has that calling upon our lives to make a difference somewhere and to impact the life of another. And it's not determined by our age, it's not determined by where we come from or what we're going to do in the future. Each one of us is called to make a difference. So I suppose the question that I want each one of us to ask ourselves today is this. What is my calling? What is my purpose? Where am I called to make a difference in this world? For you see, when we ask ourselves that, that is when sparks are ignited, dreams become reality, and transformation happens right before our eyes. And when each one of us is able to ask ourselves that, and not only that, but listen to the answer and believe in the answer, and not only that, but pursue that calling with every fiber of our being and every ounce of who we are, then that is when the phrase, "we can change this world," is no longer just a cliche ending to a 6-minute speech, but instead actually becomes our reality. Thank you.